Hello and welcome everybody back to the Eleos podcast. If you're new with us, Eleos is just an ancient word that means mercy or compassion for those in need. So it means we speak up for those who are disregarded or disenfranchised. It also means we stand up for those who are marginalized or mistreated. We just try to tangibly express that we are for one another and with one another. And it's kind of in this essence of Eleos in light of recent events with George Floyd and too many others, that we are hosting this series of conversations about social injustice and race. And so we'll hear from various Black men and Black women with the goal of educating, empathizing, and ultimately energizing all of us towards real change. And we certainly understand that these simple dialogues can't possibly signal the end of all of the unconscionable racism and social injustice that exists in our day, but they can serve as the beginning of something, and we can all do something. So we hope that you will continue to join us for these series of enlightening conversations, and we hope that it will encourage us all towards a life of Eleos. Our guest with us today is Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson is the Chief Diversity Officer and Director at Gibbons Law in New York and New Jersey. He is a corporate attorney focusing on mergers and acquisitions. He was also the former Assistant Counsel to the Governor of New Jersey from 2010 to 2012. As the Chief Diversity Officer, Rob is responsible for overseeing the Gibbons Diversity Initiative, which develops and supports various platforms to promote and achieve a broadly inclusive workforce and workplace through ethnic, gender, and other forms of diversity. He's a graduate of Rice University and also the Seton Hall University School of Law. He was a former college basketball player, former professional basketball player, former teammate of mine. And so it's our pleasure to welcome Robert Johnson to our podcast today. Rob, long time no see, man. It's good to have you on.
Yeah, it's good to hear from you. It's a unexpected delight, but it's good to hear from you. You look well. Good to see you. You know, I like the shave haircut.
I've lost a lot of hair since you last saw me.
Yeah, since I last saw you, you come down my world. You know, you.
That's right. That's right. We all end up there somehow.
We get there sooner or later.
Yeah, very good. Well, hey, man, I really do appreciate you joining us for this conversation. In a lot of ways, it's kind of an easy conversation that we'll just kind of talk through, share your story, share your experiences. But in other ways, it's not an easy conversation because it's some very sensitive topics and subject matter, and it's not always easy to go through. But again, we do want to help educate people, bring some people awareness, and hopefully energize some change. We ask everybody kind of the same 8 questions, and so we'll let that kind of guide us through this conversation. And again, it's your story, it's your experience, so we're just happy to hear from you. So the first thing we always ask in this conversation is, when I say racism, you say what?
Oh, that's a lot of things come to my mind, but judging from, my current state of affairs in this country with everything that's going on, like I'm right in New York where a lot of the rebellion is still going on. I don't use the word riot because I feel like if you kind of marginalize a person, it kind of cut off economic, opportunities, and kind of heavy hand of policing, you get a rebellion at some point, and particularly when you have a kind of global pandemic affecting everyone and forcing everyone to be home, forcing your jobs to shut down. But when I say racism, I say, racism is the foundation of this country. After the Civil War, it was never fully officially addressed. And if not addressed, it will be something that can destroy this country.
Yeah.
From within.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that can be easily addressed. And it's so silly that in 2020, we're having the same. My grandmother grew up doing Jim Crow South. I talk to her every day, talk to her today. Love her dearly. Very small, went to college back then. But the fact that we're still having the same protests about the same stuff in 2020 when we just shot a rocket up, to the space station is absurd to me, but it's because it's something we never actually talk about. And so that's what I say. When you say racism, I say it's the foundation of this country. It's something that's really never been addressed. People say, well, we fought a civil war for it. We elected Obama. Again, not addressing the root issue of it. And if it's not addressed, it's something that will destroy this country. And I'm really concerned about that. So,
yeah. Well, that's part of the reason we wanted to have you on today is, I know you grew up in Texas, you went to school in Houston, and now you've lived in the New York area for a long time. So you've seen kind of the deep South and you've seen the far Northeast. And so you've got a unique perspective on our country and on this issue. Do you have a first recollection of racism?
Absolutely. I had like when you're kids, you just have a good time. You just go off and you play, and whoever plays with you, right? You don't think white, black, Mexican, brown. You're just having a good time. You go out and kicking the ball. I had a friend in the 5th grade. I won't say that person's name, but good friend of mine, right? And go to his house every day, right? Because it's just go play. Is he outside? Knocking out every day after school.
Yeah.
One day I came over, and his mother came to the door, right? And I said, hey, is blank at home? And she looked at me, just paused for a second, and then said, wait, hold on, and then walked away. My friend comes to the glass door, and I'm in his neighborhood, like, hey, you come out, can you come play? He was like, I can't come out to play today. So, you're in the 5th grade, like, oh, what you do? You get in trouble? What you get disciplined or punished? He's like, no. I'm like, all right. And then I'm asking a bunch of other follow-up questions because you're real honest in 5th grade. Like, well, what's going on? He's like, well, I don't think I can play with you anymore. I was like, why? What are you talking about? He's like, well, my dad said it's weird. Why is that nigger coming over here? And I think it's weird that nigger's coming over. So that nigger should probably stop coming. So you can't come over here anymore. And so that's my first time, right? I mean, you're a kid. Are you 5th grade? You don't understand what's going on. You're not an adult. I did not get mad. I started laughing because, you're honest when you're young, right? I started laughing, right? Because I was like, my exact words was, oh, that sucks, man. Like, your parents are stupid. Huh. And I didn't say it like I didn't get offended that they said, why is, I was just like, oh, that sucks. That just sounds so ridiculous. Your parents are really dumb. And then another thing that was going through my mind, because when you asked that question, I was thinking like, I'm assuming they're trying to, read my 5th grade mind. Maybe they're trying to look down on me because I'm black, but our house is bigger than yours. So, there was like that whole thing. So like, how can you look down, So then I was like, well, all right, I guess I think it was a weird thing in the 5th grade because I'm not going to play with my friend anymore, like one of my earlier first friends. So I didn't get offended that they said that this nigga couldn't come over here anymore. I couldn't process it. I remember the look in his mother's eyes when she came and looked at me like, ugh. And, see, my parents never even said anything negative about other races, like, why you dating this white woman and white girl, you know what I mean? Because Lord knows I've dated many like people outside the race. But I wonder, like, if my parents, said something like that to me, would change my perspective of the race? And I would like to think it wouldn't because it's so stupid. That's what I kept thinking. It was like, that's so 5th grade, right? And my reasoning is that for a 5th grader. But that was so stupid. But then over time, we stopped talking, right? Like, the same class, you in the class, you didn't go to different periods. You stay in the same class all day back in the day, remember? We wouldn't go to first, second. So I'm in class with him every day, right? We don't talk anymore. Then I started to get mad as the year went on. But I was like, and I remember in the 5th grade, I was like, well, I'm not going to beat him up because of that. I will beat him up for something else. And then the next year, I jumped on him because he knocked the pencil off my desk and I threw him all over the classroom. So I'm not proud of that. It's mine. So next question.
Yeah. Well,
But in pulling up back to Rice, getting stopped, driving home from all those small towns, Hearn, especially Hearn in particular, Calvert, those places on the way back to Waco from Houston, when they dropped the speed limit to 30 miles. I thought the law, and I can get in this later, was that they stopped me when you get pulled over. I get out the car, lay on the ground, they throw all your stuff out your car, right? Just for like speeding, right? You get a ticket. I thought because that's all my experience. I didn't, bounce it like all my other friends, like that was the law, right? Well, as I grow up and go through law school and criminal procedure, I realized like, holy crap, that is not the law. But and that was in like my 30s when I was like, well, it's not the law. That had happened as an adult. So,
Yeah.
but that it just kind of followed through in life.
No, that's helpful. I think a lot of people, they associate racism with something, hey, this is something happened 25, 35, 45 years ago. And so they're not always surprised to hear that. And then, these really egregious acts like we've just seen with George Floyd, who's a native
Right.
Houstonian, happen, and it brings a lot of awareness to it. But I think where there is a gap in awareness and understanding is how prevalent just simple, if that can even be a term, simple acts of racism occur every day in every.
Like dust in the air that we
Yeah.
breathe. And after going through law school, finishing at the top of my class in law school, so I feel like because I've read every case. They was like, don't read every case. I was like, I read every, because every day, not that I'm smart, just everything was like a shock, so shocking to me. In particular, 3 classes: constitutional law, criminal procedure, and evidence, right? Criminal procedure and evidence in particular, that dealt with like how the police, how it's into the hand. And I'll get into a story about that later in one of the questions that's very important to bring up. But, it's from laws to redlining, Jim Crow, while we still have HBCUs, they were all like to stop and target people. And we act like that was a long time ago. Like I said, my grandmother's still alive. So the people in power are still alive, right? And these systems are like constant, you can't move into this neighborhood. And it's not just as a South thing, by the way. It's they do it in terms of property taxes in the Northeast, right? It's different. It's just ways that people go about it. It's in everything that we do. And, as you get older, either you're going to be very, that whole stereotypical angry black man, because the more educated you become about this, the more enraged you become. So you have to, I'll get into making circuit breakers, but we can go to the next question. So.
No, that's good. And I think it's a good place to pause, because you're going to have a different perspective than some because of your position, because of your education, because of what you help cities and states go through and corporations go through. So, a term we hear a lot bubbling up in the last couple of weeks is this term systemic racism. And I think that's part of what you're alluding to, is how it's so prevalent in all walks of society. So like, from your kind of legal, governmental background, how deep is this issue in our country?
It is deep. It's the inception of our country, right? It's not like it's a new thing. It's always been there. Well, until when I was 3/5 of a person, right? You know what I mean? Like, as in terms of, Jim Crow, can I eat at the same restaurant table more recently, right? To today, where just saying Black Lives Matter is an actual political statement. Just think about it. Saying my life matters is a political statement.
Right.
And then, people play semantics, because back in my grandma's day, they just call you the N-word. Now they'll say all lives matter, blue lives matter, when there's no such thing as a blue life. There's just a color of a shirt that a police officer wears, right? And which I find weird. It's just slick ways to be like, no, you don't matter. Kind of like Confederate flags and monuments to say, we don't care what the law is. No, you don't matter. No, you don't matter. And it's like that constant reminder, and like picking and poking in the wound. Unless you make mental circuit breakers, you'll be angry all the time. And where I've come from Waco, Texas, to corporate attorney doing M&A, like just seeing and understanding, like I look different than a lot of people that I went to school with. It wasn't just a class I went through. It was like an eye-opening, interactive experience. Like, holy, how like Supreme Court justices, like why it matters who they're fighting on, who they put these judges on, because that's the point of view. And I don't care what they say about judges, like just calling balls and strikes. That's not how it works. They pick people who have slants and leans. Otherwise, they wouldn't be fighting for it about it. And in my profession, I get really mad because you hear people saying, like, an originalist point of view. I'm like, oh, when they originally wrote the Constitution, I wasn't technically a person. So we want to keep going back to that original. What do you mean original? See, it's slick ways, and you can argue with people really smart who like keeping that status quo. They might not be in their mind racist, but they like the position in the head start they get in life from the systemic racism that's granted certain groups of people advantages over other people. And living out here, I know the Irish had issue back coming in as they raised the Polish, right? It was like Irish need not apply. I learned that coming in, like, but it was different with Native American and Black people. You had actual genocide with Native Americans. With Black people, it was like the labor to kind of build a product, and we never talk about the rape, right? That we, that makes a lot of this taboo about this. So they always went out in terms of, they were property. You can do whatever you want with property. So much widespread mass rape that we don't even have African features anymore. We're like a new breed of people, right? Never talked about, how they reduce, these issues. And a lot of these issues stem from education and knowing about it. We can take these advanced classes when we're at Rice, right, about African-American history, but we're not going to get it in your public schools where they try to reduce slavery to two paragraphs in the Texas history book. You follow me? So, I don't think white people in particular, are evil or mean, or even when I see people flying, because I'm from down south, when they're flying that flag, they're like, this is my heritage. I'm just like, he don't know what that flag means. You can't wave a flag like that and support the American flag, because that's a treason flag. You can't say we're the party of Lincoln, but you support waving the Confederate flag, right? Because if you wouldn't ask someone who's Jewish to be okay with someone waving a German swastika flag. It's a reason Germany got rid of those. See, that's why I said it's never been addressed here, because that proliferated after the Civil Rights Act. That was when civil rights too means like, I can sit at this bar at the restaurant with you and you can't spit in my face and beat me up. I can ride this bus with, that's civil, not equal, civil. Civil is like, I have to be civil to you. And I see these younger generations are asking for equal rights, and it's slick now where they're like, you ain't gonna get equal rights, and we'll, as through an occupying force, keep you in your place. It's just, it changes in terms of like now, like, when slavery, they've been putting people in jail. Like ever since the 13th Amendment, they just all these people out of work. It starts systematically, you have to do things legal. And that racism is an evil thing in our country. And if we don't look at it and talk about it head on, we're not gonna have a country. That's the thing, because, even if, and I always tell people, even if you were like, like a smart racist, or just you enjoyed this position as Head Start position, we got a lot of that selling to the rest of the world that we're freedom and equality. And if you work hard, you can do it. That's that American dream we set out to the whole world, get their top people to kind of come over and immigrate to this country. We've been selling it. Black people have always been around like as a shadow saying, pulling on the string, like, that's not necessarily true, make it better. That's not necessarily true, make it better. And it's kind of always been like a thorn, and we're like not acknowledging it. You have like, the head of the Attorney General saying systemic racism doesn't exist.
Yeah, I saw that.
Just saying, no, I don't believe it, which I find ironic. How can two old white men say that systemic racism doesn't exist? They've never felt what it means, right? So I don't know. It's complicated, but if we don't address it, look what's happening right now. This will get worse. So,
I think a lot of people share your concern on where this all leads if we don't address it. And I think part of the problem is we don't know, or some people don't know, what success looks like. What's the end goal? How does all of this look if it's right? And so part of what we want to do is bring some hope to people in the midst of all this, and share part of your experiences with relationships or circumstances with people of other races that you feel like this is how it should be. And I know you've got lots of relationships like that, but if you could just share one or two, I think that could be helpful.
We worked really well when we were picked to finish dead last, and we, were like five, like it was no, your teammates, right? In sports, you get a lot of that because you just work together, right? But I've had situations like professors. Elizabeth Long was a professor at Rice, right? So as you get older, you realize, if you don't go to a really good public school, people with money can send their kids to better schools, right? They can pay for private schools, certain tutors. right? I get exposed to certain things. I didn't have money growing up, so I went to poor school, but I was an A student at that poor public school that I went to, right? Because, I never wanted to be embarrassed in the classroom. Same with on the court, I don't want to be embarrassed in the classroom. Not that I wanted to be a scholar, but that was like one little thing I had. But when I got to Rice, I was just behind, right? A lot of the kind of classes that people took in like the 10th grade, like they didn't even offer it in my school, right? Levels of calculus. So it was like certain majors that I probably wanted to get into was like, I couldn't, I didn't have like a number of the building blocks. But I worked really, really hard. And Elizabeth Long and Marsha Regnagel. Elizabeth Long was like, I think at one point she was like the dean in the sociology department. And Regnagel was an English professor. And like, I remember like the first assignment I turned in to them, they were two white women. I turned in assignment, they were like, marked it up terribly. I spent time on it, they were like, did a 5th grader write this, right? And I was like, like most people get it. I was like, I thought I had offended them, but I worked really hard. And I remember coming up to them both after class and said, I'm really sorry about this. I didn't mean to offend you. I think I'm behind in terms of the work expectation. Can you help me?
Wow.
And their eyes, like, oh my God, because they're like, oh my God. And I'm just honest. I think I'm behind where everyone is. I get there, but I'm gonna have to do some extra work. Can you help me out? And they did. And to the point by the time I was like into my sophomore year, I was an A student at Rice, right? But I had people help with me. And these two white women, not where I'm from, but took some time to help me out. It's been so many. Like, listen, I'm at a AmLaw 200 law firm. No, it's hardly any Black people here, right? Your mentors, I tell incoming associates of color before they make partner, the person who's going to help you out, who's going to be your mentor, is going to look like you, Jason, not me.
Right.
Just the numbers. So you need to understand that, and the obligation is on you to find something to bridge that gap with that white male, because I have another white male who's kind of taught me how to do this job, right? You're going to have someone to teach you and show you and look over your work. And, your mentor in this legal profession, not going to look like you. I tell students of color that, new attorneys of color this all the time, to temper their expectations, right? I can help you. I might not be in your practice group. I'm a corporate attorney, you're a litigator, you're an IP attorney, but I can tell you, be aware of this and look for that opportunity, because I've been able to grow from some of these men. They don't even know, not from my background, just in terms of teaching me a technical practice or expertise, the same way those professors helped me out, right? But you got to kind of be open to it. And I have, a lot of unconscious bias that you learn about in our the things that confirm biases that we have, that we see too. And as a minority, I know that there are unconscious biases about me, but I also know I bring into the situation my own biases, right? And I need to be like not looking for everything, little thing that can trigger me. That's what I talk about. So as a Black person, I know there are biases about, or stereotypes about me. And I can't walk in the room thinking they're going to think about these stereotypes and, on a certain turn stereotypes back, because I'm not going to have a good relationship with them, and it won't be beneficial for no one. And I've seen that play out where people are misreading each other because they're coming from completely two different wavelengths. This person's not racist, but they might say something. Black person might be perceiving it as a certain way. And I'm just like, no, that's not it. I've diffused so many of those situations because I explain it to the person, right? People do put foot in mouth situations where they say things that they didn't mean, or they don't even know that they're offending because maybe they don't know Black people. There's been a lot of that. So
yeah, that's true. And part of what I'm kind of learning myself through all of this is that, we grew up in the athletic arena, and as you've alluded to, and we're teammates, we're brothers, if you can play, you can play. We're just trying to accomplish something together, and no matter what color you are, and there's always exceptions to that. But in large part, I feel like in the athletic arena, there's a certain understanding and awareness that we just grow up with.
Yeah.
But what I feel like I'm learning as I'm stepping out of that athletic arena and into the corporate world and in the nonprofit world is sometimes that gap is larger than I take for granted how large that gap is. And because there is a lack of interaction, there is a lack of real relationship between races, I live in a predominantly white suburb here, and they didn't grow up in the teams in the locker rooms that I did necessarily. And so, some of this stuff is catching neighbors off guard. And, they're saying things or expressing things that they're just unaware of. And so, again, I think that's why we have conversations like we're having now, and I hope it sparks more between, everybody. So what would you want people of other races to know about you?
I'm a human being, and I don't normally wear a suit. I wear a suit because I got to go to work and things like that. And in the office, I'm in a kind of corporate job, but I'm a human. And as a Black man, and this is things that, I started learning this, it started in 5th grade. That's when that clock ticked, as the world started, you have to learn how to respond to every situation. A lot of Black people create circuit breakers to kind of diffuse interactions that from systemic racism that can put you on edge, right? Like James Baldwin said, the direct quote was, to be educated in Black is to be in like a constant state of rage, right? And after through law school, I really understand with this. You're seeing the history of how they're talking about, from affirmative action to all types of stuff, integration of schools, redlining, moving in like targeted things to affect people that just look like me on the sole basis because the color of my skin, which is to me absurd, right? But I would just like people to know that not just necessarily me, but a lot of times Black people are dealing with that. And we don't naturally go to therapy, right? Like I don't go to therapy. You know what I mean? We don't naturally do that. But these are very complex issues, and some of us handle it better than others. If you see someone being upset, or, they say like, why are they tearing up the neighborhood? Or, why are they rioting and looting? That's why I say I don't use the word riot. I use the word rebel. And if you've been pushed to where you don't have any opportunities, economically, your schools are horrible, no opportunities for your kids, and then the police in your neighborhood like an occupying force. I don't know. After over a period of time, it's like you got nothing to lose. Maybe you want to pick up a brick and throw it through a window. Right?
Yeah.
Because you're lashing out so much, you're so angry. When you've been in fights before where you get so mad, you cussing everybody out, and myself, like I'm ready to fight everybody. It's just a drop of a dime. That's not my natural personality. You know what I mean? But you get so angry, you do things that are kind of bad things happen in the rebellion, right? Yeah. And things that weren't part of the initial movement. So I just like people to know that, Black people, it's tough for the country, but it's in particularly tough for Black people right now because it's a problem we didn't create. We've had to live with. And I think it's kind of a revelation, like now the world's seeing it. And when you're getting people on your side, the positive thing is a lot of white people out here marching. That's why it made me hope that something change. Because Black people been getting beat in marches and riots for the longest and nothing changed since 2020. But this time is the first time in country history it's different. But I would just like people to know that these are kind of some of the things that are kind of working in your psyche as a Black person to maintain your job so you don't go off the handle, not to be that stereotypical angry Black person. These are the things that are going through my head. And it's unfortunate because I got enough stuff to go through my head at work dealing with like clients, very complicated problems than that, every day. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, more complex and runs deeper than most people understand. And so I think if they did understand how deep and how long that river runs, there would be a little more tolerance for whatever.
Absolutely. I think that I'll give a tangible example. The people who say, it's my right to this wave this Confederate flag. If they were educated and knew what that flag actually meant, you wouldn't see an uproar when they tear down the statue or rip down the flag, right? If they were educated to know that that flag is a treasonous flag, and if you're mad at Colin Kaepernick from kneeling, then you would probably be mad at a person waving the Confederate flag because that Confederate flag tried to overthrow our current American flag, right? So it's that psyche so I can't it's tough for me to get mad at that person because that person is obviously ignorant, right? Now, however, there are some evil people, and I have to catch myself because when I get that confirmation, because it goes both ways, that like something that confirms my biases, like that person am being racist. I mean, like that I don't push that on like all white, because I'll say in my life, the majority of white people have come in my life and tried to help and be friends with me. Right. And and even though we're in a system where things are unequal, that's my experience. And I remember that, right? It's people who want to know and want to empathize to make this situation better. So, but yeah.
No, yeah, and you mentioned, I think the word you used was evil or wicked. And one of the things we do ask during this conversation is, from your perspective, is there a spiritual component to all of this? However you would define spiritual.
Oh, absolutely. I have read I read the Bible from cover to cover when I was in France, because playing overseas is shocking. You go from what am I doing myself? It's like when you play overseas, it's that first time like, do I want to really do this with my life? I like the ball, but no, you know what I mean? Like then it's like what I'm talking about, right? So it's just like what. So it was like a, growing up in the South, in the Bible, everyone, you go to church, you kind of go, I got Baptists on my family. I mean, my mom and grandmother and sister, they're Jehovah's Witness. Bible just all around, right? So it's like, but I never I read it cover to cover like a book, like I was studying. And honestly, I think that was actually the best thing that I've done, because not just going to a building and sitting there and having someone talk for an hour or two, and then I leave and I fulfill my obligations. I read it because I was like the first time I wanted to. And it was probably the best thing that I ever did, because it gave me a grounding and understanding. And it also, you come across different ways, but it also breaks down every human interaction that you can have. It's all covered. If you just read it, there's nothing new and happening in this world that hadn't been covered in that book. And I'm not like a pitch for like being super religious. I'm just telling you, if I'm just looking as objectively speaking as a book, reading it from cover to cover, it covers everything. And I suggest everyone do it. You don't even have to, I suggest to an atheist, read it cover to cover, because if you could live your life that way and abide by some of the principles in that, you would have a much better life, right? Like, my natural urge would be to, fornicate, to see as many different people. That's my natural urge, right? As many women as possible, right? But I know, like, if I could live the Bible principles and didn't do that, I'd have a more meaningful relationship. This is like an example that comes to the top of my head. Yeah. But it keeps me grounded and not losing my head in certain situations, because, some of those principles and things that Jesus do, and I'm not being all religious, just they've dealt with it. This is how you deal with that situation. I think that's anchored Black people, because Black people, that's all we had coming out of slavery, right? The Bible. That's why they cling Black people, very religious. I think also that has anchored us, and it's a good thing for America. Think about a group for over 400 years that have been oppressed, not wiped out, but oppressed in such a way, and brutalized in such a way, and treated in such a way. You may never heard of no insurgent Black terrorist cells in this country. We're like over 15% of the population, right? Mm-hmm. You've never heard of us, we're gonna turn this thing over. No, it's like Bible principles. We want equality. Take it. We'll take it. Take it. Just please. It's always kind of like our king and them march, a peaceful march, right? That's all rooted out the Bible. And you don't have to. People don't have to be in the Bible, be religious, but I'll say I think that's one thing that's actually helped this country, because we ain't had that. Look across the world, a group of people been treated that way. They'll go run up in the Starbucks with a bomb on their back, like just to prove a point, because you'll turn suicidal. And I think, when you asked that question, I never thought about it. I saw that question, I was like, I think it is important to me, right? Because, it gives me a chance to balance out, pray, and think about, and all the stuff that I read, and the people who had experiences worse than mine, in the Bible. People deal with much worse experiences,
Hmm.
and how through faith they were able to kind of maintain themselves, and how they dealt with that situation. And some of those rules you can't apply. Lord knows I can't live up to a lot of them. But if I could, and I try to apply living up to some of those principles in my current day life, and I think it helps calm me. My natural reaction is to, when I get angry, fight, and I'm just wired that way. I grew up with a bunch of football players, and then it was like just fight. And,
I think most people listening to this or watching this won't understand how remarkable this part of the conversation is for me and you to be having together.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you and I know where all the dead bodies are buried.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like,
if they could have seen us 20 years ago at Rice and doing the things that we were doing and saying the things we were saying, they could not predict that we just had that part of a conversation.
Absolutely.
And I've never had this conversation with you, but I had a similar experience when I played in Austria my first year. I read the Bible cover to cover. That was the first time I'd ever read it like a book, read it like a story, and it changed my worldview. I didn't know who this Jesus dude was. I'd heard about him. You grew up in Texas, you're going to get, Jesus is going to be around.
It's just around. But
it wasn't personal in any shape or form to me. And so just to read the stories and to see the way he carried himself and went about his life was transformative. You take the religion out of it, take the spirituality out of it, just the reality of, like you said, everything you need to know about life is covered in that book. And it revolutionized the way I looked at the world. So I appreciate you sharing that. And
we had kind of similar wavelength. You played it. We played the same high school. I was thinking about that. Remember, it was in Houston.
Yeah.
Played in a high school. It was like an all-star game. It was at UA. You remember that?
Yeah, I think I beat somebody up in an elevator.
Yeah, it was. You played outside. It was like an outside pickup game. I was like, who is that dude? He was just killing dudes too. Though. I was like, that dude. I was like, that dude.
We come a long way.
I was like, all right. Yeah.
We come a long way.
Long way.
So, I think one thing that would be good for us to cover here, because I do think some people feel paralyzed by the situation and the instant reactions and the social media, and you can become a hero or a villain in the blink of an eye. How do people of other races that aren't Black, how do they help what's going on here? Because there were previous times where I would tell people before the virus and everything, man, you don't understand how far shaking somebody's hand or giving them a hug or just having a simple conversation or smiling at somebody when you pass them, you don't understand how disarming that can be.
Absolutely.
I remember I was at a grocery store, I don't know how long ago it was, before the virus for sure, and it was an older Black man that dropped something. I picked it up, handed it to him, and I shook his hand, and man, he held my hand so tight.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, "You don't understand how long it's been since a white man has shaken my hand."
Yeah.
And I get chills as I talk about it now, but that's real for so many people. So I think a lot of people, as you've alluded to, they're not inherently evil. They're not inherently racist. They do want to help. There's a lot of evil and a lot of racism out there, but there are also a lot of people who do want to help. From your perspective, what are practical, tangible things? How can we help the cause?
I think listening, like in talking, right? Not when we hear things that I say confirm our biases, right? That, oh, you're like this, you might see behavior in something. It takes, because your brain's wired, this is science, your brain's wired that way. And you have to actively stop it from doing that, right? And, since it is institutional racism, and like, listen, some benefit from that. And I don't, people are like, oh, you talking, you get political, because I feel like Black people's issues are outside the liberal conservative argument. It's like they're arguing about who they can kind of put in their voting block base to win, right? And you start becoming, I've seen how this works in governance council. Yeah. So I'm not taking it like which political party, that political parties are comprised of like all types of stuff, right? But in order to change some of the institutions, there are people who know that they have advantages. It's reasoning from corporate interests. I've seen how lobbyists work. I deal with them on a daily basis, right? Our firm has the largest lobbying group in the state. When I was in counsel's office, I dealt with lobbyists, right? It's the federal, state level. And the issue and attention that goes into the policies of these bills that eventually get signed into law are real. I've seen it economically, right? But it was also at a point in time racially, right? It's like, it wasn't a coincidence, like when the crime bill was written, that we were like, okay, we got cocaine and crack. We're gonna give you 5 years for crack, which is poor from cocaine. But one group does cocaine, and the people writing the laws who do cocaine. And they're like, we can't put people in jail. Like, come on, man, that's our party drug. If those people turn up stuff in crack, we can put them in jail for 5 years, proliferate the whole world. But like, it's thought that goes into that level of detail. A lot of people don't know that. And when you see credible people saying like this person, and I don't want to say at a party, supporting specific issues that are negative to us, because I think that's how Black people vote, right? Because here's our choices. We got the choice of a person who's not qualified for the job and the country's going down toward it. I'm not being political, so I'm not going to say a party. Then we got one person who offered the crime bill that tripled the incarceration rate of African Americans. Why all African Americans vote for that person who tripled incarceration? Because we know the country is going to blow up because one person is not qualified to have that job. So we're jumping on that other new guy who we're praying that VP person just for some stability. See, that's how pragmatic Black people are. Like, oh, we like this person because it's like a survival type vote. And, when people, you got to identify at the political system, because this is so deep. Like, it's a reason that they put so many Federalist judges in certain positions, because they're gonna, if it's a gray area in between the laws, they're gonna rule a certain way. And I don't care what nobody say about calling balls and strikes what judges do. If that's the case, they wouldn't be fighting so hard of what authorized sanctioned body. And that's gonna last for like 40 years outside of political stuff. That's where the checkmates already happened, right? And these people don't, and I don't, my opinion, aren't concerned about issues that affect people that look like me. And they're more concerned about like keeping a status quo power. And they can hide, but like, well, we're not necessarily being racist. We just, this is order. And this, we do recognize we have a position here where we don't have to deal with X, Y, and Z. We like that. It's economically, this thing, how can the stock market be up and 40-something million people out of work? Fed pumping 2.3 trillion into like, equities and the security markets. Like, we're not even talking about the real. You're talking about someone throwing a brick through a Adidas store and running out with some shoes. That person's poor. God bless them. They got some shoes. What are we talking about? The 2.3 trillion in tax dollars that are going to prop up like the very richest of us. And then it gets into like, oh, you're saying something, you're socially. People start putting labels on you. You're like, I'm calling how I see. But we listen to Black people say this, or we're not for a certain person who's going to be in political power to maintain certain. When we say we don't support that person because that person don't even believe that systemic racism is real. It's not enough of us. We need help to say other people to agree. Like, if Black people are saying this and this person's saying it, maybe I hadn't as a white man dealt with systemic racism. But if all these Black people saying like it exists, just listening to us, and when we say that person's trying to keep the status quo, maybe helping getting on our side and support keeping that person out of political power, because it's all part of it. It's like a holistic thing. But I think listening, and I'm trying to keep this out of like Republican Democrats, because that when you say that, people jump on sides of the aisle like you're playing the Lakers versus Celtics, which I'm neither, by the way. Republican, to be clear, because I'm just, who's going to hurt least is how I vote. Because my issues aren't at the former, and this is a person who's seen how it looks and works unfiltered.
Yeah. Well, so, I think part of this conversation has reminded me that one of us went to class a lot and one of us didn't. One of us was really trying.
I had to have a backup player. You're a better basketball player.
one of us was really trying to make when my papers were all marked up, I just walked away. Like, so, I mean, it's obvious, man, that work ethic and that passion has carried you a long, long way. And you bring all of that to bear in the job that you have now. And I can tell you, man, I've had a lot of these conversations, and you're speaking in a way and addressing things that most people just aren't. So it's very enlightening to me personally. And I'm hopeful that it will be for a lot of people.
It's just, I would have, me 20 years ago, you think I'd be come corporate? Never. You know what I mean? Like, it just, you never know, but it's experiences. And these people who I work with, by the way, I always find when I have an opportunity to tell them, everybody I knew growing up in high school has been arrested at least once. Me too. Now, after my experience, because they look at me like, because they're like, oh, you're this, and you're like, I'm corporate. I'm like, no, that's not me. So when the poor Black person in Newark, who you see and you kind of look down on because he's poor, I'm not any different from that person. Mm-hmm. And I tell these people this because they're in power, or they know people in power. We have different politicians coming around trying to get a big check every quarter when it's time for election, right? Because our firm writes them a big, talk too much, but that's how it works, right? But I tell these people, so like, because I know I'm the only Black person that they know substantively. Hmm. So don't look at me like they hit you with like a unicorn. I'm like, I'm not a unicorn. I'm no special than any Tom Blow from Waco, Texas. Yeah. I could jump 44 inches off the ground with my vert, and that's what got me in the right. To be honest,
not everybody can do that.
Yeah, that's my specialty. So,
that's good, man. Yeah, and it's so true. I tell my kids all the time, the walk from here to the edge of the cliff is not a long trip, man. Yeah. Like, we're all one step away, one bad decision away, one bad break away from
steal.
Do that everybody looks down on.
Steal. When I rhyme is steal. That's why, like, when people try to get me to talk on a lot of panels all around, like law panels, I'm like, no. I tell them no, because sometimes you give me a panel, I'll just start speaking. It'll be really true. Maybe people need to hear that, but I'm different than a lot of people in this profession at my core.
Sure. Well, hey, I'll get you out of here quickly. Just two last questions. The first one is, and I think a lot of people would want to hear this answer because of your different experiences. You lived in different parts of the country. And now that you've been through the experience, are there other people that that you think would be helpful in this format? Who else should we chase down to be part of these kinds of conversations that would be helpful to our audience?
I think getting I see this in the media, right? And Malcolm X had said something about it. He's like, why? Sometimes in the Black culture, we always holler about athletes or entertainers, like as being like the speaker. They're professors that know the details about this stuff. I understand you kind of got to get the views. That brings it in. Like if LeBron James comes on your podcast, all of a sudden, here's 1 million people going to look at it, right? But with those people, make sure that they bring in like a professor or who study this the same way we study basketball. We expect experts or something in that particular field, whatever field you study, because there are people who do that. And those people, sometimes I've noticed, never get the microphone or voice to speak. And a lot of people don't have the good fortune to be able to go to college and listen to some of these professors speak who's done empirical data and research on all these things, right? A lot of people don't have that because it's expensive. You know what I'm saying? We got a scholarship, right? We didn't have to worry about that. But, bringing, you can get a person that can bring the views on, but also having someone who's like in this field, who's like a professor in this particular area that can go into kind of specific detail to understand. Because most people don't, what you said, you made a good point, don't understand what does systemic racism mean? We hear this term going around. What does that mean, right? If I didn't know any better, I'm like, yeah, what does systemic racism mean, right? Well, if you someone to explain that, right? And I kind of knew it intuitively because my grandmother grew up doing Jim Crow, right? She never, to her blessing for him, never ever complained about anything. It was tough for me to complain. I was, but like, I think that'd be helpful because like these podcasts are great because people, a lot of education on it. But that would be my
No, that's a good point. And I fall victim to that myself. I invite people to these conversations that I know and I've been in locker rooms with and have run in those circles. So maybe we connect offline on a few.
Yeah. You should let Rice know you're doing this. I'm sure that,
Yeah, right.
they would they would like current athlete to talk about it, as for the views, and have like one of his favorite professors in that particular subject matter area come on. And at the same time, like you could ask them the questions like me, and then the professor kind of know when to kind of get in with the specifics, right? Because you're young, you just, what I mean?
Yeah, let me tell you what's really going on.
Yeah, which is like, young kids, but it's like, listen, I think this country is fantastic. And if we live up to what we say, we'll remain that way. And it's easy to live up to what we say. We know what it is as a country, right? Because we sell it to the rest of the world, right? Yeah. So, it's kind of like, cleaning it up at your own house first. And I think you got to stay positive. Sometimes I can go off. I'm one of those weird people, like we play a away game. I actually do better when people boo me and hate me. My averages go up. But I think being positive, looking at some of the protests that are going on, they are very diverse. And that is the first time in American history.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the protests, what sparked all of this in a lot of ways was what happened to George Floyd. And, at the conclusion of every one of these conversations, we always kind of go back to that fact that, some cop felt the liberty to kneel on his neck for 8 minutes and 46
seconds. I've seen worse videos than that of cops.
Yeah.
People, it's funny, like, which one blows? You know what I'm saying? I just think, I've seen some I'm on like a attorney group of, I know about these stories before they hit mainstream because I'm like, attorneys send me tweets of local stuff that never, so it's like all day I'm getting inundated if I turn on my Twitter of stuff that I see. But yeah, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And so, we always talk about how long 8 minutes and 46 seconds is. And, I'm getting older, man. For me, just to be on my knee with nothing underneath me.
Yeah, knees sorry, get locked up on you.
It's difficult, right? So the fact that this dude did what he did and choked the life out of a man.
His hands in his pocket.
Say it again.
With his hands in his pocket, like, this is what I do.
Very
knowing I'm being video recorded. They knew they were being video recorded.
And still did.
That's more of a, and we're gonna get away with it.
Yeah.
At 17 complaints, it's police union. When people say don't get, another thing that people say, like, when people say defund the police, what that means is take some of those resources. It's not like abolish the police. You take some of those resources in those communities, in high schools, computers for high school, homeless people, cops are doing too much right now. They aren't equipped to handle all this. You guys have like associate's degree out of high school or college or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you make every other profession jump through all these hoops, but we give this person a gun with limited education interaction, make a life or death decision.
Yeah.
It's like a ridiculous concept. But I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're taking junior high basketball players and throwing them on a college court and expecting them to be good at that job.
Get it going. It's like, wait a minute, like, it's going to be bad basketball.
You're in trouble.
Yeah.
So, all that to say, we always want to give each of our guests kind of an unfiltered, unencumbered segment at the very end. You don't have to take 8 minutes and 46 seconds. You take 8 seconds for as long as I care. But just want to give you that platform to say any closing things you'd like to say as it concerns this conversation and these issues that we've addressed.
Oh, absolutely. I will give a story about my second year law school in criminal procedure. And it dovetails into the listening part, right? That we were talking about, like, what can people do? I'm like, well, you can if you listen and really be empathetic and listen, right? To see where you'll find where you can help and be an ally. Just listening is just an ally. And acknowledging, shaking that guy's hand, that's an ally, right? But that story you said, which is, I get that. But so I'm in criminal procedure and Professor Weffing, and at second year law school. And law school, they teach you it's a weird type of schooling. It's like the Socratic method. Like you stand up, really teach, but you read cases and get the rule and do analysis and different opinions, and that's how they teach it. It's like a weird, annoying form of school. But in this particular class, the professor assigned like 2 books. One was the case book, which is that's what you traditionally get your grades on, and you're on the curve, and it's really competitive. And one was like a book of statistics on, racial profiling by police. Statistics, data, math. You know what I'm saying? Lawyers can't do math. That's why we went to law school, right? So, just there for you to, and for the first 2 weeks of class, we just read statistics. It was like 90 people. Now, this is liberal New Jersey, too, so they hit you with that, like, oh, it's all messed up down south. You know what I mean? This is why I know that's BS. It's same everywhere. It's me and another younger black dude from Harlem. He younger than me. I'm from down south. I'm old. I played overseas. I'm trying to figure out life after basketball. So I'm more used to, like, being poked and prodded without flying off the handle, right? And the professor had us read these statistics, and people would ask questions about it and say, I don't believe this. This doesn't make sense. Like, why with the police? This doesn't make sense. And people like, are we gonna have to do statistics and do equations? And he's like, everything that's assigned reading is subject to testing. So that's really freaking lawyers. If you say something like we gotta do equations in law school, like you're gonna have people like, what? Going like, what are you like? It's about they're about to in there. So after 2 weeks, it hit a head, and he said, okay, close this book. We can open our case books. And he signed us reading and said, I did that for a point. He said, since, a lot of people have been questioning the statistics that you're reading and do they exist. Now we're in New Jersey, remember, blue liberal bastion of liberal Democratic New Jersey. Statistically speaking, the professor said, you guys are going to graduate lawyers, going to be prosecutors, defense attorneys, state legislators writing the laws that affect these people in these communities. You're going to be judges judging these people that come before your court. You're going to be governors. You're going to be federal legislators. You're going to be in Congress. Statistically speaking, in this room right here, this is what, statistically speaking, all of you are going to go off to do in life. And we wonder why some of these problems still exist when you guys, the people who are going to be responsible for dealing with this segment of society, don't even believe the problem exists. And that stuck with me. And I was just like, they don't. I believe this, because when I drive from Houston through Hearn and Calvert, I was like, get pulled over. I know it. It's like every day. Every day of my life, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, But I just thought it was. Every day was like an epiphany for me of how my illegal interaction with police officers, just from my life growing up. I'm not a thug. I went to Rice University, went to law school, never been like I've been wild and stuff like that, but I was a basketball player, a college student, like most college kids. But being tall and black, I'm treated differently as people who they would say, quote unquote, I don't even like use that word though, people who live in lower socioeconomic conditions and black, who they would call thugs, right? I'm the same way. And that cop that pulled me over in Hearn and Calvert didn't know I played at Rice University. I'm just in a little Ford Escort, looking like any other dude. And they treated me just like any other dude. But the fact that the people who are going to be in charge of changing it didn't even believe that that was a real thing. That's one of the few guys like I would always get up and try to comment and give because people will know me like, oh, you text your mouth up and they think, oh, nice. I just heard how you do it. But no one believed it, and statistically speaking, these are going to be the people making decisions about that. That's when I realized everyone in law school was a blockhead and not as smart as they thought they were. And these going to be people in law firms, they're judges now. I know a lot of them. With that point of view, like, no, people who might be the attorney general say, there's no such thing. No, systemic racism doesn't exist. The gall to say that means you're stupid. I'm sorry, that means you're stupid if you say that. Because you don't know that now. We got these things, phones, social media, like everything. If you don't know it exists, I know we're all in our own world, but if you don't know it exists, then you're willfully ignorant or you like it that way. So that's how I will leave it. I don't know if that's more than they said, but that stuck with me. And if people want to change, some of those people in there listen, though. Some of those people in those groups listen, in that classroom listen. Talk to me after the class. So.
Well, you know, we've said a lot during these conversations that, you know, it can't end with these conversations. The problem is not going to get fixed just by talking, but it is a place for us to start, because I think you're right. So many people don't believe that it exists, or don't want to believe that it exists, or do know it exists and just like it. And so we've got to do our job of educating and bringing awareness, and hopefully that serves as a foundation to actually start taking real action and make real change. So I think you're going to be part of that solution, not just because of this small thing that we're doing here on this podcast, but because of the job that you hold and the passion and the education and experience that you have. I feel better just talking to you, man, knowing that there's guys like you out there that know what you know, that want to do what you do, and we need more like you. And I'm sorry that it took this crazy, terrible circumstance to start this conversation again between you and I, but I'm glad that we are.
Oh, man, I'm glad to hear from you. It was like the delight. I was like, "What's up, man?" I was like, "How you doing?" Like I was actually having a terrible. We have no idea. I was having a terrible week on some other stuff, but yeah, it was good to hear from you. And so, you know.
Well, I appreciate you being on, and certainly thank everybody in the audience, and we'll see you next time.